Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 947th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the caliph arose from his seat with Jafar and the rest of the party, all entered the wardrobe where they donned merchant's gear. Then they went down to the Tigris, and embarking in a gilded boat, dropped down with the stream till they came to the place they sought, when they heard the voice of a damsel singing to the lute, and chanting these couplets. To whom when the wine cup is near I declare, while in the coppice loud shrilleth and trilleth Hazar. How long this repining from joys and delight? Wake up, for this life is a borrowed ware. Take the cup from the hand of the friend who is dear, with languishing eyelids and languishous air. I sowed on his cheek a fresh rose, which amid his side locks the fruit of grandata tree bare. Thou wouldst deem that the place where he tare his fair cheek were ashes, while cheeks hues incendiary wear. Quoth the blamer, Forget him, but where's my excuse, when his side face is growing the downiest hair? When the caliph heard this, he said, O Jafar, how goodly is that voice? And the wazir replied, O our lord, never smote my hearing aught sweeter or goodlier than this singing. But, good my lord, hearing from behind a wall is only half hearing. How would it be if we heard from behind a curtain? But good, quoth the caliph, Come, O Jafar, let us play the parasites with the master of this house, and haply we shall look upon the songstress face to face. And quoth Jafar, I hear and I obey. So they landed and sought admittance, when behold, there came out to them a young man fair of favour, sweet of speech, and fluent of tongue, who said to them, Welcome and welcome, O lords that honour me with your presence. Enter in all comfort and convenience. So they went in, and he with them, to a saloon with 4 faces, whose ceiling was decorated with gold, and its walls adorned with ultramarine. At its upper end was a dais, whereupon stood a goodly row of seats. Thereon sat 100 damsels like moons. The housemaster cried out to them, and they came down from their seats. Then he turned to Jafar and said to him, O my lord, I know not the honourable of you from the more honourable. Bismillah, deign he that is highest in rank among you favour me by taking the head of the room, and let his brethren sit each on his several stead. So they sat down each according to his degree, while Masrur abode standing before them in their service, and the host asked him, O my guests, with your leave, shall I set somewhat of food before you? And they answered, Yes. Hearing this, he bade his handmaids bring food, whereupon 4 damsels with girded waists placed in front of them a table, whereon were rare meats of that which flieth and walketh earth and swimmeth seas, sound grouse and quails and chickens and pigeons, and written on the raised edge of the tray were verses, such as sorted with the entertainment. So they ate till they had enough, and washed their hands, after which they said to the young man, O my lords, if you have any want, let us know it, that we may have the honour to satisfy it. They replied, 'Tis well. We came not to thy dwelling save it for the sake of a voice we heard from behind the wall of thy house, and we would fain hear it again, and to know whom it belongeth. So an thou deem right to vouchsafe us this favour, it will be of the generosity of thy nature, and after we will return whence we came. Quoth the host, Ye are welcome. And turning to a black slave girl, he said to her, Fetch me thy mistress such an one. So they went away, and returning with a chair of chinaware, cushioned with brocade, set it down. Then withdrew again, and presently returned with a damsel, as she were the moon on the night of its full, who sat down on the chair. Then the black girl gave her a bag of satin, wherefrom she brought out a lute inlaid with gems and jacinths, and furnished with pegs of gold. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 948th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the damsel came forward, she took her seat upon the chair, and brought out a case with a lute, and beheld it was inlaid with gems and jacinths, and furnished with pegs of gold. Then she tuned its strings, even as saith the poet of her and her lute in these lines. She sits in it a lap like a mother fond, and she strikes the strings that can make it speak. and ne'er smiteth her right an injurious touch, but her left repairs of her right the wreck. Then she strained the lute to her bosom, binding it over it as a mother bendeth over her babe, and swept the strings, which complained as child to mother complaineth, after which she played upon it and began improvising these couplets. "In time my lover restore me, I'll blame him vain, saying, Pass, O my dear, the bowl, and in passing drain the wine which hath never mixed with the heart of man, but he passes to joy from annoy and to pleasure from pain. Then Zephyr arose to his task of sustaining the cup. Didst e'er see full moon that in hand the star hath taken? How oft I talked through the night when it rounded Lune shed on darkness of Tigris' bank a beamy rain, and when Luna sank in the west 'twas as though she waved o'er the length of the watery waste a gilded glaive." When she had made an end of her verse, she wept with sore weeping, and all who were in the place wept aloud till they were well nigh dead. Nor was there one of them but took leave of his wits, and rent his raiment, and beat his face for the goodliness of her singing. Then said Al-Rashid, "This damsel's song verily denoteth that she is a lover departed from her beloved." Quoth her master, "She hath lost her father and mother." But quoth the Caliph, "This is not the weeping of one who hath lost mother and father, but the yearning of one who hath lost him she loveth." And he was delighted with her singing, and said to Isaac, "By Allah, never saw I her like." And Isaac said, "O my lord, indeed, I marvel at her with utmost marvel, and am beside myself for delight." Now Al-Rashid with all this stinted not to look upon the housemaster and note his charms and the daintiness of his fashion, but he saw in his face a pallor as he would die. So he turned to him and he said, "Ho, youth!" And the other said, "Adsum, at thy service, O my lord." The Caliph asked, "Knowest thou who we are?" And he answered, "No." Quoth Ja'afar, "Wilt thou that I tell thee the names of each of us?" And quoth the young man, "Yes." When the wazir said, "This is the commander of the faithful, descendant of the uncle of the prince of the apostle," and named to him the names of the company, after which quoth Al-Rashid, "I wish that thou acquaint me with the cause of the paleness of thy face, whether it be acquired or natural from thy birth-tide." Quoth he, "O Prince of True Believers, my case is wondrous, and my affair marvellous. Were it graven with gravers on the eye corners, it were a warner to those be warned." Said the Caliph, "Tell it to me. Haply thy healing may be at my hand." Said the young man, "O Commander of the Faithful, lend me thine ears, and give me thy whole mind." And he said, "Come, tell it to me, for thou makest me long to hear it." So the young man began, "Know then, O Prince of True Believers, that I am a merchant of the merchants of the sea, and come from Oman city, where my sire was a trader, and a very wealthy trader, having 30 ships trafficking upon the main, whose yearly hire was 30,000 dinars. And he was a generous man, and had taught me writing, and all wherewith a wight hath need. When his last hour drew near, he called me to him, and he gave me the customary charge. Then Almighty Allah took him and admitted him into his mercy, and may he continue the commander of the faithful on life. Now my late father had partners trading with his coin and voyaging on the ocean. So one day, as I sat in my house with a company of merchants, a certain of my servants came to me and said, "O my lord, there is at the door a man who craveth admittance to thee." I gave leave, and he came in, bearing on his head something covered. He set it down and uncovered it. And behold, it was a box wherein were fruits out of season, and herbs conserved in salt and fresh, such as are not found in our land. I thanked him, and gifted him with 100 dinars, and he went away grateful. Then I divided these things amongst our friends and guests who were present, and asked them whence they came. Quoth they, "They come from Basra," and praised them, and went on to portray the beauties of Basra, and all agreed that there was not in the world goodlier than Baghdad and its people. Then we fell to describing Baghdad and the fine manner of its folk, and the excellence of its air and beauty, and of its ordinance, till my soul longed for it, and all my hopes clave to looking upon it. So I rose, and selling my house and lands, ships and slaves, negroes and handmaids, I got together my good, to wit, 1,000 dinars, besides gems and jewels, wherewith I freighted a vessel, and setting out therein with the whole of the property, voyaged a while. Then I hired a bark, and embarking therein with all my money, sailed up the river some days till we arrived at Baghdad. I inquired where the merchants abode, and what part was pleasanter for domicile, and was answered, "The cart quarter." So I went thither, and hiring a house in a thoroughfare called the Street of Saffron, transported all my goods to it, and took up lodging therein for some time. At last, one day, which was a Friday, I sallied forth to solace myself, taking with me somewhat of coin. I went first to a cathedral mosque called the Mosque of Mansour, where the Friday service was being held, and when we had made an end of congregational prayers, I fared forth with the folk to a place hight Karn al-Sirat, where I saw a tall and goodly mansion with a balcony overlooking the river bank, and pierced with lattice window. So I betook myself thither with a company of folk, and sighted there an old man sitting handsomely clad and exhaling perfumes. His beard forked upon his breast in 2 waves like silver wire, and about him were 4 damsels and 5 pages. So I said to one of the folk, "What is the name of this old man, and what is his business?" And the man said, "His name is Tahir ibn al-Allah, and he is a keeper of girls, and all who go in to him eat and drink and look upon fair faces." Quoth I, "By Allah, this long while have I wandered about in search of something like this." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 949th night, she pursued, "It hath reached to me, O auspicious king, that the young merchant cried, 'By Allah, this long while I have looked about in something like this.' So I went up to the Sheikh, O commander of the faithful, and saluting him, said to him, 'O my lord, I need somewhat of thee.' He replied, 'What is thy need?' And I rejoined, ''Tis my desire to be thy guest tonight.' He said, 'With all my heart. But, O my son, with me are more damsels, some whose night is 10 dinars, some 40, and some more than that. Choose which thou wilt have.' Quoth I choose her whose night is 10 dinars. And I weighed out to him 300 dinars, the price of a month, whereupon he committed me a page, who carried me to a hammam within the house, and served me with goodly service. When I came out of the bath, he brought me to a chamber, and knocked at the door, whereupon out came a handmaid, to whom said he, 'Take thy guest.' She met me with welcome and cordiality, laughing and rejoicing, and brought me into a mighty fine room, decorated with gold. I considered her, and saw her like the moon on the night of its fullness, having in attendance on her 2 damsels, as they were constellations. She made me sit, and seating herself by my side, signed to her slave girls, who set before us a tray covered with dishes of various kinds of meats, and pullets, and quails, and sound grouse, and pigeons. So we ate our sufficiency, and never in my life ate I aught more delicious than this food. When we had eaten, she bade remove the tray, and set on the service of wine, flowers, sweetmeats, and fruits, and I abode with her a month in such case. At the end of that time I repaired to the bath. Then going to the old man, I said to him, 'O my lord, I want her whose night is 20 dinars.' 'Weigh down the gold,' said he. So I fetched money, and weighed out to him 600 dinars for a month's hire, whereupon he called a page, and said to him, 'Take thy lord here.' Accordingly, he carried me to the hammam, and thence to the door of the chamber, whereat he knocked, and there came out a handmaid, to whom quoth he, 'Take thy guest.' She received me with the goodliest reception, and I found in attendance on her 4 slave girls, whom she commanded to bring food. So they fetched a tray spread with all manner of meats, and I ate. When I had made an end of eating, and the tray had been removed, she took the lute, and sang thereto these couplets. 'O waftings of musk from the Babel land, bear a message for me which my longing have planned. My troth is pledged to that place of yours, and to friends their bidding a noble band, and wherein dwells she whom all lovers love, and would hen, but she cometh to no man's hand.' I abode with her for a month, after which I returned to the sheikh, and said to him, 'I want the 40 dinar one.' 'Weigh out the money,' said he. So I weighed out to him 1,200 dinars, the mensural hire, and abode with her 1 month, as it were 1 day. For what I saw in the comeliness of her semblance and the goodliness of her converse. After this I went to the sheikh one evening and heard a noise and loud voices. So I asked him, what is to do? And he answered, saying, this is the night of our remarkableness night, when all souls embark on the river and divert themselves by gazing one upon the other. Hast thou mind to go up to the roof and solace thyself by looking at the folk? Yes, answered I, and went up to the terrace roof, whence I could see a gathering of people with flambeaux and cressets, and a great mirth and merriment. Then I went up to the end of the roof, and beheld there, behind a goodly curtain, a little chamber, in whose midst stood a couch of juniper wood, plated with shimmering gold, and covered with a handsome carpet. On this sat a lovely young lady, confounding all beholders with her beauty and comeliness, and symmetry and perfect grace, and by her side a youth, whose hand was on her neck, and he was kissing her, and she kissing him. When I saw them, O Prince of True Believers, I could not contain myself, nor knew where I was, so dazed and dazzled was I by her beauty. But when I came down, I questioned the damsel with whom I was, and described the young lady to her. What wilt thou with her? asked she, and I said, she hath taken my wit. O Abu al-Hasan, hast thou a mind to her? Ay, by Allah, for she hath captivated my heart and my soul. This is the daughter of Tahir ibn al-Allah. She is our mistress, and we are all her handmaids. But knowest thou, O Abu al-Hasan, what be the price of her night and her day? No. 500 dinars, for she is a regret to the heart of kings. By Allah, I will spend all I have on this damsel. So saying, I lay heart sore for desire through the lifelong night, till the morning, when I repaired to the hammam, and presently donned a suit of the richest royal raiment, and betaking myself to Ibn al-Hala, said to him, O my lord, I want her whose night is 500 dinars. Quoth he, O my lord, I weigh down thy money. So I weighed out to him 15,000 dinars for a month's hire, and he took him and said to the page, carry him to thy mistress, such an one. Accordingly he took me and carried me to an apartment than which my eyes never saw a goodlier on the earth's face, and there I found the young lady seated. When I saw her, O Commander of the Faithful, my reason was confounded with her beauty, and she was like the full moon on its 14th night. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 950th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the young man continued to describe before the Prince of the True Believers the young lady's characteristics, saying, she was like the full moon on her 14th night, a model of grace and symmetry and loveliness. Her speech shamed the tones of the lute, and it was if she were whom the poet meant in these verses. She cried while played in her side desire, and night o'erhung her with the blackest blee. O night, shall thy murk bring me ne'er chum to tumble and futter this coit with me? And she smote that part of her palm and sighed, sore sighs, and a weeping continued she, as the toothstick beautifies teeth, and so must prickled coin as a toothstick be. O Moslems, is never to stand to your tools, to assist a woman's necessities? Thereat rose unstanding beneath its clothes my yard, as crying at thee, at thee. And I loosed her trouser string, startling her, Who art thou? And I said, A reply to thy plea. And I began to stroke her with wrist-thick yard, hurting hinder cheeks by its potency. And she cried as I rose her courses three, Suit they agree the stroke, and I suit thy gree. I saluted her, and she said to me, welcome, and fair welcome. And taking me by the hand, O Prince of True Believers, made me sit down by her side, Whereupon, of the excess of my desire, I fell weeping for fear of severance, and pouring forth the tears of the eye, recited these 2 couplets. I love the nights of parting, though I joy not in the same. Time happily may exchange for the boons of Union Day. And the days that bring union I unlove for single thought, seeing everything in life lacking steadfastness of stay. Then she strave to solace me with soft, sweet speech, but I was drowned in the deeps of passion, fearing even in union the pangs of disunion for excess of longing and ecstasy of passion. And they bethought me of the low of absence and the estrangement, and repeated these 2 couplets. I thought of estrangement in her embrace, and my eyes rained tears red as Andam wood. So I wiped the drops on the long white neck, for camphor is wont to stay flow of blood. Then she bade bring food, and there came 4 damsels, high-bosomed girls and virginal, who set before us food and fruits and confections and flowers and wine, such as befit none save a king. So, O Commander of the Faithful, we ate, and sat over our wine, compassed about with blooms and herbs of sweet savour, in a chamber suitable only for kings. Presently one of her maids brought her a silken bag, which she opened, and taking thereat a lute, laid it in her lap, and smote its strings, whereat it complained as a child complains to a mother, and she sang these 2 couplets. Drink not pure wine except from hand of slender youth, like wine for daintiness, and like him eke the wine. For wine no joyance brings to him who drains the cup, say bring the cup-boy cheek as fair and fine. So I abode with her, O Commander of the Faithful, month after month in similar guise, till all my money was spent. Wherefore I began to think me of separation, as I sat with her one day, and my tears railed down my cheeks like rills, and I became not knowing night from light. Quoth she, Why dost thou weep? And quoth I, O light of mine eyes, I weep because of our parting. And she asked, And what shall part me and thee, O Lord? And I answered, By Allah, O my lady, from the day I came to thee, thy father hath taken of me for every night 500 dinars, and now I have nothing left. Right soothfaced is the saw, penury maketh strangerhood at home, and money maketh a home in strangerhood. And indeed the poet speaks truth when he saith, Lack of good is exile to man at home, and money shall house him wherein he roam. She replied, Know that it is my father's custom, whenever a merchant abideth with him, and hath spent all his capitals, to entertain him 3 days. Then doth he put him out, and he may return to us nevermore. But keep thou thy secret, and conceal thy case, and I will so contrive that thou shalt abide with me till such time as Allah will. For indeed there is in my heart a great love for thee. Thou must know that all my father's money is under my hand, and he wotteth not its full tale. So every morning I will give thee a purse of 500 dinars, which do thou offer to my sire, saying, Henceforth I will pay thee only day by day. He will hand the sum to me, and I will give it to thee again, and we will abide thus till such time as may please Allah. Thereupon I thanked her and kissed her hand, and on this wise, O Prince of True Believers, I abode with her a whole year, till it chanced on a certain day that she beat one of her handmaids grievously, and the slave girl said, By Allah, I will assuredly torture thy heart, even as thou hast tortured me. So she went to the girl's father, and exposed to him all that had passed first and last. When which Tahir ibn Allah heard, he arose forthright, and coming in to me, and as I sat with his daughter, said, Ho, such an one! And I said, At thy service. Quoth he, 'Tis our wont, when a merchant grow poor with us, to give him hospitality 3 days. But thou hast had a year with us, eating and drinking, and do what thou wouldst. Then he turned to his pages and cried to them, Pull off his clothes. They did as they bade them, and he gave me 10 dirhams and an old suit worth 5 silvers. After which he said to me, Go forth. I will not beat thee, nor abuse thee, but wend thy ways, and if thou tarry in this town, thy blood be upon thine own head. So I went forth, O Commander of the Faithful, in my own despite, knowing not whither to hie for what had fallen on my heart, and all the trouble in the world, and I was occupied with sad thought and doubt. Then I bethought me of the wealth which I had brought from Oman, and said to myself, I came hither with 1,000 dinars, part price of 30 ships, and have made away with all of its house of yonder ill-omened man. And now I go forth from here, bare and broken-hearted. But there is no majesty, and there is no might save in Allah, the glorious, the great. Then I abode 3 days in Baghdad without tasting meat or drink, and on the 4th day, seeing a ship bound for Basra, I took passage in her of the owner. When we reached our port, I landed, and I went into the bazaar, being sore and unhungered. Presently a man saw me, a grocer whom I had known aforetime, and coming up to me embraced me, for he had been my friend, and my father's friend before me. Then he questioned me of my case, seeing me clad in these tattered clothes. So I told him all that had befallen me, and he said, By Allah, this is not the act of a sensible man. But after this that hath befallen thee, what dost thou propose to do? Quoth I know not what I shall do. And quoth he, Wilt thou abide with me, and write my outgo and income, and thou shalt have 2 dirhams a day, over and above thy food and thy drink? I agreed to this, and abode with him. O Prince of true believers, selling and buying till I had gotten 100 dinars, when I hired me an upper chamber by the riverside, so happily a ship could come with its merchandise, that I might buy goods with the dinars, and go back with them to Baghdad. Now it fortuned that one day there came ships with merchandise, and all the merchants resorted to them to buy, and I went with them on board, when behold, there came 2 men out of the hold, and setting themselves chairs on the deck, sat down thereon. The merchants addressed themselves to the twain with intent to buy, and the man said to one of the crew, Bring the carpet. Accordingly, he brought the carpet and spread it, and another came with a pair of saddlebags, whence he took a budget, and emptied it on the carpet. And our sights were dazzled with that which issued therefrom, of pearls and corals and jacinths and carnelians and other jewels of all sorts and colours. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of this tale, till it be morrow.